Let's see. So, I think with that, I'll go to I've got some prepared remarks and I'm going to read them, try to look up at the same time because I can't not memorize this much at this stage of my life. So, today's meeting is a chance to provide information on some of the development issues that have raised questions and concern throughout the community. It's also an opportunity for me to listen to you, to hear your concerns and thoughts. It's a chance to touch base, for us to listen to each other, a community conversation. So while I'm here today as your representative on the Board of Supervisors, I'm also here as a member of the Ross Valley community and Greater Marin. I'm not new to this county. For those of you who don't know me, a little background. I've lived in Marin for most of my 54 years. I was raised in Mill Valley, where my family was very much involved in community issues, conservation efforts, and the environmental movement. I spent my young adult years in West Marin, and since 1995 have lived in San Anselmo, where I raised 3 children, 2 dogs, several cats, many chickens, and 2 lovebirds. The lovebirds were the smartest of all the pets. I'm a writer and a journalist by trade. I've always been active in the community with a focus on school and education issues. I also have a strong interest in environment and open space protections, and I cut my teeth in local politics, working for former Supervisor Hal Brown for 8 years before being appointed to fill his seat when he retired in 2011. So I know this county pretty well, and I know this community pretty well. It's a beautiful place we live in. It's a wonderful place with a rich history and a long tradition of community activism, conservation, and thoughtful prospective planning. That tradition was defined in decades past by the defeat of proposals for freeway extensions and major development in West Marin, and with the adoption of our first county-wide plan in 1973, codifying in land use planning our conservation goals and establishing the blueprint for how Marin County would grow going forward. More recently, voters approved Measure A, which will help us maintain and restore existing open space, district preserves, protect remaining undeveloped lands, support family farms, and connect more community members with public open space, and nurture the next generation of environmental stewards. Our community values, our conservationist heritage have stood the test of time and have made Marin one of the premier, most attractive places to live in all of California, if not the nation. But this county and our communities are not without challenges. Traffic, aging public infrastructure, water resources, risk of flood and fire, a graying community, crowded schools, the high cost of housing, climate change, and sea level rise. These are just some of the challenges we face and need to address as a community. Recent development proposals, like the Wind Cut project in Corte Madera and the current discussion around the Larkspur Station Area Plan, have residents thinking about the future, about future development and the future of Marin. This heightened awareness, this concern is a good thing, important and in keeping with the county's activist history, citizens engaged and participating in solving problems and envisioning what our county, our communities will look like going forward into the future. So let's talk briefly about 2 subjects that have triggered a lot of local angst, and not without warrant. The Corte Madera Wind Cut project and the Larkspur Station Area Plan. It's very important to understand both regards to Wind Cut and the Larkspur Station Area Plan, and to our discussion today, that development decisions, zoning, and land use authority rest ultimately with the local jurisdiction. For the Wind Cut property, because it lies within the Corte Madera town boundaries, it is with the Corte Madera Town Council. For the Larkspur Station Area Plan, it is the Larkspur City Council. For any development or land use zoning change in Kentfield or unincorporated Greenbrae or any other areas of unincorporated Marin, it is the county or Board of Supervisors. So about WinCup. There is a lot of speculation about what it is, what it isn't, and why it happened. But there is universal agreement that it is too much. Towards clarifying the record, I've done some research. And this is what the record tells me. The WinCup story goes back to 2009 when the town of Corte Madera amended its general plan. That amendment included the rezoning of the 4.5-acre WinCup property to allow for mixed-use residential commercial development of up to 180 units at a density of 40 units per acre and retail space. The rezoning also required that if developed, 10% of those units be affordable. An application for the project was submitted in 2011 and approved in 2012. There was a public process, meetings before both the Planning Commission and the Town Council for both the general plan amendment and the project review. Both the rezoning and the project were subject to environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. So the end result, the project you see under construction will include 162 units of market rate residential housing and 18 below market units, plus 5,000 square feet of ground floor retail. The developer is McFarland Partners of San Francisco, a private for-profit real estate investment management firm. WinCup is a done deal. The Larkspur Station Area Plan. As I noted earlier, authority for land use and development decisions reside with the local jurisdiction. This is local control. For the Larkspur Station Area Plan, that is Larkspur. The good news about the Larkspur Station Area Plan is that no decisions have been made yet, and there are many decisions that need to be made in order to change the zoning, the land use, and development potential of the area. And every single one of those decisions, the first through the last, will require public process, hearings, and votes. The City of Larkspur has made it very clear that they will have an open, thorough, and inclusive public process for any and every decision they make with regards to this proposal. That is reassuring to me and should be reassuring to you, to all Ross Valley residents, because any major development, any significant development that might occur in the Larkspur Station area has potential for impact on traffic, congestion, school population, and public services that could directly affect neighboring communities, the neighboring communities of Kentfield and Greenbrae specifically, not to mention the broader community when it comes to traffic issues. So the City of Larkspur is accepting comments from the public and agencies on both the EIR, and the draft plan, and is reaching out broadly for input from the residents of Larkspur and all of us as well. I'm reviewing the documents, I will be following the process, I will be speaking with council members, I intend to weigh in on the proposal on behalf of Ross Valley residents. I have also asked the appropriate county departments and agencies to review and submit comment on the project. I encourage all of you, residents of Greenbrae and Kentfield, the Ross Valley, to participate, to provide input and be part of this important public discussion. For information on the draft plan, you can go to the Larkspur website. The full documents are there, as well as a thorough executive summary and a fact sheet that I think you'll find not only readable, but also helpful in understanding the proposal, the options, and the process. As I said, many meetings in the near term and long term around this proposal. This is not anything imminent. There is time for public discussion and process. And the very first of those meetings is going to be on May 22nd, 6:30 at Hall Middle School over on Doherty Drive. So I'm fully aware and concerned as any of you, about what happens over in the Larkspur Station area. It needs to have good implications for the community, not bad. It has to be a positive for the community, near and far. It's vitally important that the decisions made for the area improve conditions in existing conditions versus cause harm. And I will be advocating for the same. So lastly, there's been concern and some talk about the Sir Francis Drake corridor in the Greenbrae-Kentfield area and potential for development here. We have, you have, if you're from Kentfield and Greenbrae, very strong, very clear zoning and development regulations in place that prevent anything close to a wind cup from happening here. You not only have your own local Kentfield-Greenbrae community plan developed by your community, but also the county general plan, building code, and very specific residential and multifamily design guidelines that spell out exactly what can be built and what cannot be built, the bulk, mass, height, design, and of anything that gets built here, and also ensure a strong public process for reviewing and deciding on specific projects. The combination of these local regulations provide strong protections and a really strong and valuable public process. The tools exist to ensure that historic neighborhood character, community needs, as well as the quality of life and public health and safety are the drivers of what gets built here. There are not regional or state agencies or laws that can supersede our local control, our local plans. We get to decide, you get to decide. Okay. Bottom line, the Kentfield-Greenbrae Community Plan has stood the test of time. It's backed up by the County General Plan and design guidelines and has guided development for the past 30 years here. It will continue to do so unless you, the community, decides to change it. Okay, so that's the end of my prepared remarks. Now it's your turn. I have a couple people who are going to help with mics. Are we here? And what I would ask is that, given the size of this crowd, and I would love to hear from as many of you as possible, if you've got a question or a comment, try to be as concise as possible. I'm assuming everyone's going to be very polite and civil because that's how this community is. And we'll try to get around to everybody. If you have a question or a comment that you'd rather just put down on a card and leave for me to get back to, I'm happy to do that as well, and some cards will get passed around. If we don't get through everybody, I'll follow up. We can fill out a card, leave me your question or comment, and I'll get back to you. So, I'll start up here in front because I'm not seeing my mic, so I'll take off my glasses. Okay, you're back up here.
So the question I have is, who stands...
Oh, one more thing. Could you tell me who you are and where you live, just so I have some context?
Lee Marin of Greenbrae.
Hi, Lee.
So the question I have is, who stands to benefit from the Larkspur landing development? Obviously there's the developers, but who's pushing for this? Why is this? I mean, it seems like everything's lined up against it. So what are the forces we're dealing with?
You know, so my understanding of the Larkspur Stationary Plan is that it was a planning process anticipating the eventual coming of the SMART train. That's one driver of it. The need to figure out how to handle circulation, traffic circulation and pedestrian circulation there once the train comes. I mean, these are really better questions to ask Larkspur when you get to that meeting, but I'm going to give you my best. So anticipating future changes, and a train coming is a pretty big change. Well, it's not sure when it's going to get here, but the funding is certainly getting in place. And whether you're for SMART or against SMART, it was approved by voters, so eventually it might be. Anyway, so that's one important trigger for doing some planning around that station. I come from a place, and I was brought up believing that planning and prospective planning is a tool to control development, to be able to put down the blueprint for what you want to see versus letting it happen without control and at random. I have my own concerns about the numbers and density that's being proposed there, but in terms of benefit, I see the benefit of the Larkspur Station area planning process to be towards trying to address some of the problems that are there right now in terms of traffic circulation, so they don't get worse. So you've got existing problems, and then to plan for the coming of the SMART train to make sure that doesn't exacerbate things. And if they're also looking at the zoning, there's already zoning in place over there and the ability for more development. So it's an opportunity to relook at that as well. Wait, why don't you get Scott right over here since then you don't have to run.
Hi, Katie. A couple comments.
Hi, Scott. Scott from Kentfield. Scott Peoples from Kentfield.
Scott Peoples from Kentfield. I have three questions, all right, and this is to document for your meeting as well as the rest of the audience to share and try to really ponder some of our next moves here concerning this. How is it the board thinks that Marin maintains local control over high-density housing as proposed by Plan Bay Area and ABAG and other building proposals when State Senator Steinberg has been busy passing numerous Senate bill legislations, everything from 375 to 1 to 32 to 743 and on, aimed at eliminating the California Environmental Quality Act and environmental impacts and any other local ordinance which obstructs any proposed building legislation. In other words, we're saying we have local control, but in fact, we actually are members of ABAG, and we did in July of, you probably remember it, having attended that, yes, last year, that we went and adopted Plan B Area. And my proposal is, Larkspur Station area proposal is even without accepting ABAG's funding of almost $500,000 with matching funds from other agencies. That's not even driven by an ABAG project. And I think when people voted for the SMART train, it wasn't in anticipation that high-density housing would come along as part of the package. And
okay, so now I need your question.
All right. The second question is, and I'd like us to really consider this, and you to take this back to the office and follow up on this with us.
Okay,
the proposal is withdraw from ABAG and go it alone as Marin County. County Development Code and Countywide General Plan all supposedly take care of what our housing needs are, and we make the call. Well, why belong to ABAG then?
Okay, so Scott.
Can I give you a few? I want to give you some of my reasonings behind this.
You know what though? I would love it if you would provide your reasoning to me later, because I'm hearing two really important questions that I think people would like an answer to. The one, and I'm trying to capture everything you're saying. Mm-hmm. So the first question is, there's all this legislation coming out of the state, at the state level, SB 375, SB 743, SB 1, and they are speaking to two things. One, how we deal with greenhouse gases and integrating land use and transportation planning. And two, a couple of those, specifically 743 and SB 1, are speaking more to CEQA, and that's the California Environmental Quality Act, and the potential to streamline CEQA for certain kinds of projects. Now, so that's one question. And the second question is about Plan Bay Area. So let me do the first one first, okay?
Sure.
So I generally sleep very well, except for 5 out of 7 nights. When I wake up, either worried about a flood or fire or meetings like this. So last night I woke up, it was like 4, and I couldn't sleep. So I decided to do some reading to help me fall back asleep. So I picked back up Senate Bill 1 and Senate Bill 743. And I've read Senate Bill 743 2 times. I've read through, only made it through Senate Bill 1 once completely. They're both extremely ridiculous in terms of length, confusion, and the acronyms and terms that are thrown around. But what I read into those two bills, 743, or what I take from them, and what I've also asked our planning director about, is that I'm looking for where is local control reinforced. And both those bills speak to and have language in them, and I reread them today, to the fact that whether or not, and we can have arguments and discussions, and the planning directors haven't even figured out whether or not they actually apply. Does a TPP apply here, or a TPA? Whether or not they apply, and where in Marin County. And secondly, the fact that when it talks about CEQA streamlining, if by far chance some project came along that qualified for one of these CEQA streamlining aspects, it only relates to not being, they can't be part of the CEQA process, but it doesn't usurp, and the language is clear, the local plan, the local ordinances, the ability of the local jurisdiction to use its own local plans to vet the project. We get to decide. Okay, so then Plan Bay Area, and then someone else is going to have to ask a question, because I can tell Scott wants to goodbye. Plan Bay Area, Plan Bay Area.
This is about Plan Bay Area. Okay.
I know, but you.
Okay, I have. Okay, my proposal was to withdraw from ABEG, okay? And basically go it alone, or suggest that the tri-counties, Napa, Sonoma, and Marin, form their regional group, because they're more alike versus like the city and county of San Francisco, East Bay communities, and also South Bay communities. We are not a gridded community. We're close-knit communities, townships, things that we buy into each other's difficulties. Case in point, Larkspur Landing, right? Okay, that's without one of these big ABAG proposals. ABAG is driven for building and development, and so is the state legislation, and local control will be usurped by that. I don't see how, especially being a member of ABAG, and for the various reasons of, wait, RENA numbers never seem to be correct. ABAG and MTC.
So Scott, I'm happy to respond. I'm happy to respond. So first of all, I understand what you're asking. With regards to withdrawing from ABAG and forming another council of government at sort of a regional level. And that suggestion has been put out there, and I suppose it's a possibility, but I'll tell you why I don't think it's a good idea. And why I think it's important to be actually a member of ABAG. One, as I was appointed to ABAG in January of last year, so the whole Plan Bay Area process was pretty much the training gone down the track, as they say. But I did, as well as Pat Eklund, the other representative from Marin County, did advocate strongly and did have reinforcement language put into Plan Bay Area that emphasizes the local control pieces. And furthermore, Pat Eklund did an exemplary job on the committee she served before I got there, actually arguing the population and growth forecasts and projections, and those numbers came down in Plan Bay Area for the unincorporated area of Marin County. The last 8-year cycle of the RENA housing needs allocation, we had a number of 778 units or something like that we had to plan for, not build, but plan for in unincorporated Marin. As a result of Plan Bay Area, because more of the growth is directed toward the urban counties of the Bay Area, San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland are expected to absorb most of the growth. Our number in Marin County for unincorporated came down for the next 8-year cycle to 185 units that we have to plan for, not build. So we were successful being a voice on ABAG and being a strong voice in advocating for this community. The idea of withdrawing from ABAG, I don't think a good idea also because one, we lose our voice, and two, then because state legislation does rule on this in terms of housing and needs projections, the decision gets kicked up all the way up to Sacramento, where we're more distant from the decision making. So I think that the idea of a regional council of governments is something to explore, but I would really have to do the research. I think we're protecting. I think local controls protected. I know you're reading something different, but I'm reading pretty hard because it's my job to protect this county and this community, and it's always going to be. It's been a slow growth county, and it's going to continue to be a slow growth county. So Scott, I want to hear from someone else. Right here.
Hi, I'm Dan Carter from Penfield. Thank you very much, Scott, for starting that conversation. I hope to continue it here. So, the next 8-year cycle for the regional housing allocation for the city of Larkspur from 2014 to 2022 is, I believe, 134 residential units, 132 or 134. So that's basically their target for the next 8 years. Now,
To plan for.
That's what the plan is for.
To plan for, not to do.
Correct. So the Larkspur Station Area Plan with 920 residential units constitutes 700% of that number. So essentially the city of Larkspur is trying to create from my perspective, a pro-growth strategy for their city. And this is probably a strange condition for the Board of Supervisors to deal with. You're generally poking people with a stick to make them actually build housing, whereas in the case of Larkspur, they've tipped the scale to the other side. So let's just take a step back. And yes. It seems to me that my concern as a citizen who resides outside of Larkspur is that basically I have to rely on you and the county to make sure that all of the municipalities within the county are conforming with these overall doctrines. Otherwise, if everybody else in the county jumped on the Larkspur bandwagon and built at 700% of these housing as need targets, we would have 16,000 new housing units by 2022, or sorry, by wherever we are. Yeah, 2022. Now, 16,000 housing units, I would argue, is a significant environmental impact for the county. Nevertheless, we're supposed to basically seem to go along with this idea that, you know, okay, Larkspur, if you do 700%, you're okay. I say, well, why doesn't the county require the city of Larkspur to conform with the housing projection targets that you've created? 132 housing units.
Okay, thank you. It's hard when the questions are really long like that to boil them down to something short. Two things. One, the conversation around the Larkspur Station Area Plan, I think it's going to be really important for you to be making those comments to the Larkspur City Council. In terms of the county exerting control on each of the municipalities, this county actually has a very long and strong history of respect for local control and local land use authority. The other tradition and I think nature and character of this county has been that, frankly, from my perspective, most of the jurisdictions are concerned about too much growth. We haven't grown a lot. The projections for future growth are very, very low, less than 0.5% or even 0.25% per year going out for the next 30 years. Even ABAG isn't telling us that we should be planning for more growth than that. And then we're going to keep on revisiting those growth projections. So I have confidence in the communities in Marin County to lead their own destiny, and I think that in the Larkspur Station Area Planning process, you're going to say the same thing. The Board of Supervisors is not going to come in and impose an edict on what to plan for or how much to grow. I don't think the municipalities would like that any more than we like having ABAG tell us how much we're going to grow. No, you know what? There's so many people here. Sorry. Sorry. Hi.
Hi. My name is Tia O'Brien.
Hi,
A couple
Tia.
of questions.
From where?
Kentfield,
Great.
across the street.
Welcome.
Right on Sir Francis Drake.
Yes.
Know what it's like to try to get to 101 from my house. It can take longer than getting to the Golden Gate Bridge. So a few questions. First, all with the same theme. Mysteriously, Marin has been designated an urban area. It is somewhat puzzling as a taxpayer to understand how our county representatives and state representatives allowed that to happen. This is not an urban area. There's kind of an elephant in the room here that has been touched on that I think needs to be directly stated. Local control is a really great concept. Development money and developers push back hard against communities with taxpayers who don't have lobbyists who go to the state and represent themselves at local meetings, state meetings, and county meetings. So while it's great to talk about local control, the reality is that these are developer-driven projects. And as a community, why did WinCup suddenly appear? Yes, there was a public process. It didn't work. So something was wrong. Third, if it's not a problem to have, if the county is not in favor of development along Sir Francis Drake, why then has any area of Sir Francis Drake, which is already struggling with current traffic, why are there any projects, any areas designated for potential growth? That makes no sense. If it's not important and these are phantom projects, take it off the map. That way we are absolutely sure that developers can't use their clout to make it a reality when we're told it's not going to be. And fourth and finally, I have a real problem with understanding how the county would not represent unincorporated areas and push back against local authority in Larkspur or Corte Madera or anywhere when it is going to seriously infringe on unincorporated areas. Isn't that the county's responsibility?
Okay, so three things you brought up, and I may miss something here. One, to the most recent point, and I think I spoke to it in my opening remarks. The land use decisions by law rest with the local jurisdiction, but that doesn't mean that I can't opine as representative as the representative District 2, which is contiguous to the Larkspur Station area, but it is within the city of Larkspur. I plan on definitely opining, definitely providing official comment, definitely continuing to talk with the Larkspur council members, definitely listening to this community and bringing your concerns to them. One of the bad thing about WinCup is that it was another, chip in the shoulder, breaking down trust in government and process. They had a process. It failed. I don't know why. Did the community not get their voice? Was their voice not heard? Were they participating? You have to go back and look at that. I've had enough positive experience with public process and community process to see that when communities raise their voices, decisions can be changed, plans can be made to go another direction. Perfect example, the Green Brae 101, or the Green Brae, 101 interchange freeway project. Called for a very massive flyover. The community of Larkspur and Corte Madera and Kentfield and Green Brae said, we don't want that. And so, actually, at my urging, we set up a Green Brae working group, and we went through the documents, we went through the problems with the freeway, we looked at the solutions, and as a group, as a community, working together and talking together, we recommended against the project. And the Transportation Authority that has the decision-making authority for freeways listened to us, listened to the community, and the decision went the other way. So I have some faith in the process. I don't represent Corte Madera. It's not in my district.
But But you do represent us.
I totally represent you, and I work for you, and I will continue to work
so
for you.
our feeling is that we were not represented as the unincorporated areas that are impacted in the WinCup decision, and we want to be sure that we are represented by our county in the Lark.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat something. So the question, and actually the request is, and I completely agree with it, is that the community did not feel, the contiguous communities did not feel represented in the Corte Madera WinCup project. And they want to make sure that I am participating and am standing up for this community in the discussion around the Larkspur Station Area Plan. And I am, and I will. Okay, another question.
One other point you didn't address was the Sir Francis Drake.
Oh, Sir Francis Drake Corridor. So there's been some rumors floating around about the high-density development in the Sir Francis Drake Corridor. When you get a chance, on your way out, there's a map over here in the back. It's a parcel map of the Kentfield Greenbrae community area. Shows the Sir Francis Drake Corridor. It's pretty, you can even see it from afar. It's pretty, it has color coding that shows the different zoning districts. It shows by parcel what the density, what the zoning density is. I can tell you, there are the only sites that I know of, the only sites that show on that map, the only sites in the countywide plan that are not already developed, that aren't already there, were a site was the College of Marin parking lot 15. They do have the potential to develop residential units there. I think something like 25 units. I have been told by the trustees, by the president of the college, they have absolutely no intention to develop at all because they need the parking. And you'll remember, that's over on Kent Avenue. Right next door, there's probably a 20-unit apartment building there. So that's one place. The other place is Marin General Hospital. Did have the ability through the countywide plan and through the local community plan to create new housing. I believe it was up to 50 units as part of their hospital rebuild. They are not building any housing. They are using the entire footprint for the hospital rebuild. Okay, so those are the two vacant lots that are part of your community that potentially could have held something larger. But otherwise, your community is built out. The corridor is built out. On your map, you'll see the only area that's zoned for commercial multifamily is the area on the same side as the firehouse. When you're heading towards the firehouse on the right-hand side, there's several apartments, buildings, condos, multi-family units already there. They exist.
What about slopes?
Sloat, I actually have a printout for Sloat, and can't remember the exact zoning, but in terms of what it would accommodate, it's multifamily. I can't remember the size of the acreage.
There's no room here for more families.
But okay, so I want to get back to you with the zoning on the slope law, because that's the only one I'm not completely familiar with. But I'm telling you, the community plan, the local design guidelines don't allow anything over 30 feet. They have parking requirements. They have design requirements. You couldn't build anything big in this Kentfield corridor. Right behind you, Brian.
Hi, I'm from Assemblymember Mark Levine's office. My name's Joan Lubomirsky.
Hi, Joan.
Hi. And I just wanted to respond on the question of what's happening at the state level.
Thank you.
Yeah, Assemblymember Levine has legislation pending to reduce the default density here. It should not have been combined with San Francisco at a metropolitan density of 30 units per acre, and this would reduce it to 20 units an acre. And it's going to be in the Assembly Housing Committee next week, and we think we have the votes to get it.
They already did that in Nevada.
I'm terribly sorry?
No, and the Board of Supervisors has been supporting and up at Sacramento advocating for this bill. It's AB 1537, and Mark Levine, your son has done a great job of forwarding that, and it has some legs, and we're hopeful that it will be adopted, and I will keep you apprised of that. Thank you, Joan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Elizabeth Powell from Kentfield.
Can you say your first name again?
Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
With great respect, I mistrust you. Because you say you will opine for us. Where were you during Marin County?
So that was 2008 and 2009. I was in the middle of a divorce, but I was, that said, I was working for Supervisor Hal Brown. So I worked for Supervisor Hal Brown from 2004 through 2011. Supervisor Hal Brown, greatly revered, did an amazing job for this district and this county and this community. Yeah, thank you. Always heard the community voice, listened to the community voice, always supported everything that retained local control and the slow growth nature of this county. And it was his MO, should I say, his way of doing business to very much respect local control. We did not dive into other jurisdictions, especially outside the district boundaries. So Corte Madera is part of District 4, which is Steve Kinsey's district. This is District 2 we're talking about now. So I worked for Hal Brown. We didn't get into other cities and towns' business, and that's all I can tell you. Ann, you wanna, oh, is that, I'm sorry. There you go. There's a mic. I didn't see that mic, sorry.
Hi, my name is Whitney Merchant, and I live in San Anselmo.
Hi, Whitney.
I have a different perspective than a lot of people in this audience. I was actually a housing advocate for many years, and I want to, first of all, I'm probably about the only person in this room that actually read the detailed plans for WinCup and was involved in that before it was approved. So I want to explain some things about that project because there's a lot of misunderstandings and things about it. So we opposed that project. We went to the council and said that this project is going to be a disaster, and they just didn't listen to us. I want to be clear that several people on the Corte Madera Council have claimed that they were forced by the state to approve WinCup, and that is absolutely not true. The state does not care about more luxury apartment buildings getting built in California. They're really more looking for below market rate, which WinCup is not. What happened is the owner of the WinCup site and the developer approached the council and said, look, I'm going to sell my land to this developer. They already have a plan, and you have to approve it as is. Otherwise, I'm going to drop it, and I'm going to sell it to someone else who's going to do something totally different with it. So their hand was really forced by the owner of WinCup, and the developer. It has nothing to do with the state. Secondly, there is a belief that the monstrosity of WinCup is due to its density, and that is also not true. It's 40 units per acre, which is pretty dense, but the reason why it's a monstrosity is because the size of the units. Some of those units are 2,000 square feet or 1,700 square feet. WinCup is a monstrosity because it's basically 40 single-family homes stacked on top of one another and crammed together. It's a disaster. Okay, just think about it. 40 units that are only 500 square feet are literally going to be 75% smaller building, right? It's only going to be a quarter of the size of WinCup. So that's the problem, the desire of Corte Madera was to maintain Corte Madera as this really ritzy community. So they wanted luxury apartments. And so what they got was a huge building. And it serves no one. If you really think about it, Corte Madera has 2 huge malls. They have hundreds of people driving into their low-wage retail jobs, and how many of them are going to live in WinCup? Exactly 0. Kentfield, I want to say, think about the opportunity that we have for there is a real need in Kentfield for housing for all of the College of Marin students. And it could be done very well here because, apartments for college students are going to be small. So, but think about it, by definition, it's going to be a dense building. So I want to point out some other more dense buildings that we have. Okay. San Rafael Commons is 80 units per acre. It's across from Whole Foods in San Rafael. It's a 2-story building. Or if you go to downtown San Rafael, that building that's yellow and pink is 72 units per acre, almost double the size, the density of Wynkoop, and yet a significantly less size. So,
yeah, so the point is really well made, that oftentimes density is confused with out of scale.
Exactly.
And inappropriate and not matching community character. I do want to mention one housing project that was built or has been built in the last 7 years here in the Kentfield-Greenbrae area. It's a housing project called the Tucson Senior Housing, and it's as you head west on Sir Francis Drake, past the fire station, you take a right on Tucson. It's a little road, and there's a 12 or 13 unit green building across from Ross Apartments. It is built at a density of 30 units per acre. It's 13 units, really small, and in keeping with the neighborhood, and it is housing. It's the only housing that's been built here in the Ross Valley probably in the last decade for low income and vulnerable populations. Oh, ma'am, here we go. Here.
Hi, my name is Mimi Burton. I live in Kentfield.
Hi, Mimi.
And talking about trust, who in the world compiled the EIR? I mean, truly, it is fallacious.
The Larkspur Station area, the EIR?
Yeah, and it just saying no impact on traffic. So I think traffic and quality of life is one of our major issues.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. It's hard for any of us to conceive that if you were going to develop out to the level at the high end of what's put down on Larkspur Station area plan, that it would not have any traffic impact, and I agree with you. It doesn't give you much confidence in the document. Who else? I don't know what firm. I'm not sure who put together the EIR. That's another question for the Larkspur Council.
I'm Ann Peterson. I chair the Kentfield Planning Advisory Board. While I'm talking to the other members of the board and the former members who are here, just stand up. I'm going to be really quick.
I am.
Could you stand up just so you know? Pam's one of them. There's a few around here. We are the projects that would be rezoning or something that's outside the strict zoning requirements of our area would come through our board, and we would be looking at them very closely, and we would be very much interested in the public's perception of what should happen here. I was one of the participants in writing that community plan back between 83 and 87. There's other people here who were. We tried to, I think if you read it online, it's online, the Kentfield-Greenbrae Community Plan, you'll see that it does pretty much represent what's here. The slope property is not zoned for high density. If it were to be changed, and anybody can come in with a proposal, it would be totally vetted in the community. So it's very unlikely that it would happen. So we're here, we're watching out for the community, and we'll welcome anybody to attend our meetings second and fourth Wednesday of the month usually. One project that is coming up, and we're going to meet this coming Wednesday, and I want you to be aware of that, and that is the hospital remodel is online now, and our role in that is to review the 2 large garages and a proposed ambulatory care center that is going to be built on the property. There are also 2 pods, large pods for acute care medicine that we do not have any review power over. But we will start that review on Wednesday. The project's going to take about 9 years. It's on the Marin General Hospital site, the existing site. There will be modifications to the roadway, which will affect, transportation and so forth. So we are on it, and we will be watching it as best we can.
So Ann Peterson, she's from the Kentfield Planning Advisory Board, and this advisory board is like a planning commission. It's like your own local planning commission. Is one of the most active, proactive, on the ball commissions of its kind, I think, in the county. And I work closely with them, but they also need community members to be part of that conversation. It's the first local level for vetting a project. And I can tell you, and I know Hal did through the years as well, I work very closely with the Kentfield Planning Advisory Board. I rely on their input and their reach out into the community, and they are an incredible resource for you. And with this heightened awareness about development issues, Kentfield Planning Advisory Board is like the best place for you to get involved about stuff here. And they have openings for members, and they welcome your input, and I come to their meetings, and I listen to them, and I take my cues from them. They did a fantastic job vetting the Marin Catholic Stadium project. There was a lot of community concern around lights or no lights, and I thank Ann for the work you did with the community on that. That was, I think, a good resolution in the end. Okay.
On what week you were there, and it was open to the public, and anybody from the public could voice anything that they wanted to talk about it. As far as I'm concerned, it was vetted by a very fair, open process. And that's all I'll say about that. I have my own opinions, but I don't think you need to hear them. Secondly, my opinion, and the question that I have for Katie, is public transportation. There's a current problem right now in the county as perceived by everybody. And I would like to ask Katie, and as far as my opinion is, public transportation is probably one of the utmost issues for this county. As far as I'm concerned, if they had a train down the middle of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard and had BART been allowed to come up to Marin County into the county's north, we would have a much better traffic situation. So I would like to know that, in fact, I think school buses should be paid for by the county, so we don't have this ridiculous one car, one student per person. So my question is, what's happening with public transportation?
So, and I missed that part of Ann. The traffic issue in Marin County is related to the public transportation, public transit question as well. Before I get to what's going on with traffic, I do want to go back to Ann's comments about the college, about the Marin General Hospital and the construction there, and the fact that we also need to be working really closely to make sure they have a good construction management plan so that we avoid trucks and stuff during peak commute times, and we also need to work with the hospital to get them a good employee commute program so they don't have all their employees coming to work in single occupancy cars. Traffic is the biggest, has been the #1 concern of residents for many, many years. I don't think there's any silver bullets for solving our traffic problems. I think it's going to have to be a combination of things that will help make it tolerable. It's about improving what public transit we have. To a degree, SMART may help with that, but only if we do a good job getting people from the platforms to wherever they're going to work. To a degree, it can be our public bus system, if people will ride the buses, but what we find is that most people who use public transit in Marin County buses are folks who are transit dependent. Turns out that that population may be growing because we do have a graying population, and so the county is doing a lot of work in the transit district to try to improve services for seniors, as well as invest in public transit. On the school commute issue, something like 26%, probably more in some areas, of traffic, 26% of the traffic during commute hours is generated by school-related traffic. And we used to have yellow buses here, but after Prop 13, we didn't have any money for that anymore. But we were actually, there's a study underway right now, some money was found to look at developing some sort of school bus, yellow bus possibly, public transit for some of these really highly congested corridors that we have in Marin County, Sir Francis Drake probably being the worst of all. So I have been pushing for that. I've been asking for that. I think it is something that we have to look at as a county, and as taxpayers, we may need to have to pay for it, but certainly reducing school-related traffic will make a big dent. And we also need to continue to invest in our bike and ped infrastructure. Lots of people are not going to be able to get out of their cars, but lots of people want to, and they need to have safe pathways to be able to get from point A to point B. Part of my district is Fairfax and San Anselmo, and the culture in Fairfax particularly is all about getting out of their cars, and we're seeing more and more people in Fairfax particularly wanting to use their bikes, and they need to have safe ways to get around, and they actually want to come all the way this way as well. So 1, better bike ped infrastructure, 2, better public transit, 3, we need to maximize what the infrastructure that we have in place, our roads. We need better signal light timing, we need better coordination between jurisdictions on signal light timing, and that's another project that's underway on Sir Francis Drake.
Hi, I'm Larry Cordisco from Kentfield. So,
Good evening. No, good morning.
These will be very brief. You've given us a lot of information. You have, obviously there's a lot of jurisdictions involved. But very simply speaking, are you willing to take a position that you're opposed to growth, opposed to high-density development? Because I didn't hear any of that. I just want to know if you were willing to make a very clear statement.
Yeah, here's my statement, very clearly. I'm totally opposed to any development that isn't a good fit for the community in which it's in. I also really don't think we have much room to grow much more here at all, and I would like to see any growth that does happen really serve the most vulnerable populations of our community that frankly we haven't been doing a very good job serving. Our seniors, our disabled, our most vulnerable, and I think that there's ways to do that in ways that are keeping with our communities, with historical neighborhood character, and with the zoning we have in place. And I can't say I'm opposed to high-density housing if you're talking about high-density housing like the Tucson Senior Complex down here, because I think it's a beautiful example of architecture and design and filling a community need. And it's 30 units per acre. So is that high-density housing? Or are we talking out-of-scale high-density housing?
Okay.
I mean, you know what? I don't want Marin to grow much more, but we have to anticipate some growth. So let's be smart about how we grow.
So that's a really great segue to this next question, which is, and I think Tia hit on this. There's a lot of he went down sort of answers between the different jurisdictions. Oh, I don't know who wrote that EIR, all this kind of stuff. Can you please put out some sort of agenda, a plan, 3 to 5 point plan that outlines how we can take more control over the decision-making process as people in this community? Because I don't think there's a clear agenda. I think what we're asking for is leadership to put points on the board that we all know what we're working towards so that things don't slip through the cracks. And I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion. And I actually think that would be a really good next step coming out of this meeting. But I also don't think that I should be unilaterally making the decision about how this community looks going forward. So I would like to work with the community to develop.
Will you put together will you commit to putting together this sort of agenda or proposal list so that we all know what we're working toward together?
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea, and I do commit to it, and I actually think it's going to be important to sort of frame some really the key values of the community that will guide us. Thank you for that suggestion. Rebecca? Yes. You got one person back there.
Hi, my name is Ina Gottlieb. I'm from Greenbrae. And my question is, has anyone proposed purchasing, whether it's through private funding, a foundation, or some kind of public funding, to purchase the Larkspur Station area site so that it could be used for public purposes, as opposed to for the kind of development that they're proposing?
I think that's a great question, and also that has been a solution in the past that this community, broader community, and actually even currently, when there's important vacant land, open space. We as a community come together and we have pitched in money. We've leveraged other outside local sources and grants to preserve space. If you want to preserve something, you need to basically protect it, and that means buying it or buying those development rights. So I think it's a good suggestion and something that we can look at. But I also am not sure what vacant land is over there. So that's another thing to look at. You know what? I'm not going to. They're all here listening though. So Ross Valley Sanitary District Board members are here. They're listening. As I said, there's a whole host of folks from community agencies and boards that are here listening, and I know they're hearing all this talk. And yes, the school board, Kentfield School Board representatives are here, as is the superintendent.
Good morning, Katie and everybody else. I'm Ed Harkins from Kentfield.
Hi, Ed.
I wonder if you could tell us, in specifically the case of the Larkspur Station plan, if the county decided that the negative impact in the surrounding communities was too great to go ahead with the plan, what authority does the county have to either stop or modify the plan? And if the county does not have authority, what pressures can the county bring to bear to cause the project to be either modified or stopped?
Good question. So the primary department I have analyzing the EIR and looking at the plan is Department of Public Works, because I think one of the primary concerns, and warrantably so, is traffic and congestion. So I'm asking them to really dig into that, and they haven't finished. And I'm going to be listening to what they have to say. They'll be providing some formal comment. To the degree to whether their comment, our comment as a community, does not change the proposal making it into something that will think will not have negative impact traffic-wise, I think that I would actually, instead of using the Board of Supervisors, I think we have some authority to provide comment, but we don't have land use authority. But I do think the Transportation Authority of Marin, which is also it's comprised of the Board of Supervisors and representatives from all the cities and towns, has the ability to actually, because we have some jurisdiction there, to exert some muscle in terms of what happens with the proposal. So that would be actually the tool, the mechanism that I would use would be the Transportation Authority of Marin, because that's directly a transit issue and there's infrastructure there that we have some jurisdiction over.
Thank you, Katie. I'm Vivian Braunschweig from Kentfield. And Katie, you are our representative to the Association of Bay Area Governments, correct? Yes. As such, you have the ability and the power to let them know that their process is really not logical. It's backwards, if I could say so. Because to me, to mandate housing without infrastructure is virtually criminal. That they should have no sewage, no water attachments with the housing densities that they are creating makes me seem that they are totally run by builders and no one with any true accountability. We want you, as our representative, to tell them you are doing this wrong, that this is growth for profit. It is not growth that is managed, sensible, or in any way feasible in the long run. We are going into drought years. We don't even know how long it's going on for. We really need you to tell them Marin County will pull out of ABAD unless they change their mandated ways. And I hope you can. Thank you.
Kathleen Mulcahy from Larkspur. Hi. Background information out on the Larkspur website. I've been working with the city councilman on a regular basis via email. And because of my communication back and forth with them, and you're recorded today, so they will be have the opportunity to hear your responses. In regards to that, there is some background information that was randomly placed about, and they have now made it, because of my correspondence, is easier to get to. So when you go out to the stationary plan area, the button below that is background information, and it has all the information, all the meetings that have led up to this, except for the CAC. That's a different area, but you can find it. One piece that they did not have was the workshops, the fourth workshop, and identified that that was missing or easily attainable, and that has now been put out there. And it has a summary at the very end of that report that is very telling of what this community is talking about. It's got 4 points, and it didn't go very well. My observation this week during spring break, half of us had spring break. I work for the school district. Half of us did not. Someone along Sir Francis Drake, right outside of Drake Landing, was doing some tallying of traffic on Sir Francis Drake. I've asked the city of Larkspur, they're not aware of who is doing it. So it might be your local public works department. If it is, I would throw out that data and do it during school session. The last point, and I wasn't taking notes because I was just being observing here, but I think I heard you say in your opening planned remarks was that you're a Mill Valley born and raised. And, okay, so pretty much local to Mill Valley, did a significant part of your family life in San Anselmo, and you were appointed to this position. So, and I also, appointed and then elected, stand corrected. And then the other piece was that your constituent that appointed you was very locally involved, but necessarily didn't cross the borders in regards to getting into other people's business. So I just want to make sure, from your background and where you're standing right now, that you will be transparent before May 22nd in regards to what you will be sharing with my city about your city or area in regards to the plan and the EIR, since they're two pieces. You have our emails now in the back, and it doesn't have to happen later. It can happen sooner. And so will you be transparent before that meeting in regards to communicating with this email distribution on your process?
Yeah, I'm happy. I am transparent. I actually don't follow also the MO of my predecessor, Hal Brown, who I think actually did an amazing job, but I actually do think in this day and age, we do need to be working more regionally at the local level and having conversations and between jurisdictions. I truly believe that. It's not the law, and it hasn't been necessarily the way things have been done in the past, but I think it's actually incumbent upon us to be talking on a regional level locally, especially because the traffic, just like floodwaters, doesn't care where the city border is. And I will also, we have up until June 2nd to submit comments on the EIR for the Larkspur Station Area Plan, and I will push out to this email list. I'll put on my website, get out in whatever ways possible, whatever comments that come out of the county, the department. I'm looking to the experts to do the analysis of the EIR, so Public Works, CDA, and I will listen to folks who have dug into things and bring it to me. I'll do my own digging. So I will, that's the deadline for those comments for CEQA is June 2nd. But the Larkspur City Council will continue to take comments on the plan generally, the merits of the plan, any other comments ongoing. That's what I'm being told by the Mayor of Larkspur and the City Manager. So any comments, my comments, I expect to be going to their meetings as well. I will share with all of you. I don't have anything to hide. I am a very transparent person, and I'm a very transparent elected official, and sometimes people might tell me I'm actually too honest and maybe a little too direct. and maybe sometimes not with the greatest tact. But I am honest and I'm transparent, and I will share with all of you anything regarding this Larkspur Station Area Plan. Right there.
Hi, my name is Lucy, and I've been a long-time resident of Kenfield.
Hi, Lucy.
Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. So I have 2 points to make. One, it's almost like the elephant in the room. The adding any more housing, I know that Basich right now is filled to capacity, and they are trying to move, I believe, grade 4 over to Kent. So how are we going to have more people living in our community if our school is at the breaking point? Secondly, every day when I go down Sir Francis Drake to head south on 101, it is taking my life and everybody else's life in hand going on to 101 when people are crossing over to go to Lucky Drive or illegally going to the right of me to get onto 101. How can they add any more traffic to this nightmare? And the same is true on the other side of the freeway when you want to exit 101 to come to Sir Francis Street. I would say we should have a moratorium on development, Frank.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. We've got to fix our existing problems before we add to them. And I agree.
Katie,
Clayton Smith from Mill Valley?
Mill Valley.
Okay, hi Clayton.
I have a question concerning politics here. An example is we have the Twin Cities. Well, we seem to have 2 supervisors for the Twin Cities. And it seems that we have even some portion of the station area that is in Mr. Kinsey's district. We have this gerrymandered district with Mr. Kinsey even having his tentacles into Homestead Valley in Mill Valley. And he stretches all the way from up to Molly's down here to San Quentin. And I think that this is a reason why we are having mistrust and lack of transparency. Because in this fuzziness that is created by his gerrymandered district, there seems to be always kind of a fog created, a bouncing of responsibilities here and there, a sharing and commingling, so no one really has to stand tight in their geography for what's going on there. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you and the other supervisors to gerrymander Mr. Kinsey's district, get him back out of our lives, back out into the country where he lives, so that we here in the corridor are not suffering the conflict of interest created by having a rural representative protecting his rural interests, imposing development upon us because he can get away with it politically. He's politically immune from the consequences of what he's doing. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kevin Murphy. I live in Kenfield, not far from where we sit right now. Hi. Look, I just want to give a clarifying point for everybody here. According to the EIR, SAP EIR, it says, according to Senate Bill 743, transit-oriented development projects located within a transit priority area, vehicle delay, as a level of service delays, and lack of parking are not considered significant environmental impacts under CEQA.
And that's what 743 does say, and then you have to read farther. And I just want to tell you, I don't agree with the CEQA streamlining. I don't think CEQA should be eroded. I think it's an important tool and it served the state well. But 743 is state law. The other part though of 743 is if you read farther, that it says that 743 does not prevent the local jurisdiction from looking at traffic impacts, parking, aesthetics, and using them to determine the merit that the go for green light or red light on a project. Richard Hall from San Rafael.
Thank you very much. Richard Hall, San Rafael. I've blogged on planning for reality of all. You voted for the housing element, and you also were one of just 3 votes in the county for planning Bay Area. These are based on a foundational policy of transit-oriented development. Do you disagree with the California Air Resources Board MFAT figures? I have them here translated into the emissions figures. What it shows is the emissions from passenger cars are lower in Marin than that of transit. So if you disagree with that, then you would basically allow us to support a policy where we can disregard transit-oriented development, which is pushing this density upon us. Or is it your intent to continue densifying Marin and make climate change worse, even if it's against the wishes of the residents?
So I am not for the densification of Marin County. I am, though, a supporter, and I believe that transit-oriented development is a good way to go in some circumstances. I believe that growing, for those communities that are growing, and most of the communities that are growing are not within the county of Marin, will do us a service and themselves a service if, when they do grow, they put new housing and jobs near where transit is, that they grow in infill locations and do not sprawl out into our ag lands. That's one of the primary principles of Plan Bay Area. It's also one of the primary principles of the countywide plan, and all of those rebels with a cause were all on board with development, planning that protects open space, agricultural lands, maintain your city boundaries, infill versus sprawling out. So I'm a believer in transit-oriented development. I also don't think it's a threat to Marin County. Again, this county is not expected to grow. We're going to see through this Larkspur Station area process, we're going to see an outcome that I think is going to reflect what this community wants. And you need to be a part of that process. And it may be that the Larkspur Station area plan ends up with some increased development than is what's there by 100 units or 50 units or who knows what. But the key is that it's smart development and it's appropriate for the community. Maybe there's 100 new units put in at the Larkspur Station area plan that are for seniors, that are for people who are retired, are for people who don't want to get in their cars. You know, let's be thoughtful about how we grow. I think that's the most important message. Be thoughtful, and whatever growth does occur in this county, which I think is going to be minuscule and will not come close to taking care of all the many needs, is really smart and fits in well with the community. Oh, okay, so thank you. I'm willing to stay, and I will stay, but there's people starting to dribble out or people that need to go. So I just want to, for those people who need to leave, if you have a question or a comment, can you please put it down on a card and leave it for me with your email, and I'll get back to you. I do think that there's a reason to have, there's some follow-up. I had a request to put together a proposal, or at least, you know, some guiding principles maybe about how we grow. I think that's a community process. I think that there's a place for more community meetings like this, and or to sit down and use the Kentfield Planning Advisory Board to really think hard about the Kentfield Green Bay community and put some language in place that we can all get behind. Okay, you're all leaving. Thank you for coming. I'll stay for people who want to talk more. Thank you very much.